Let's get right into it. Number 10. The Ghost Ship Crew. Imagine you're diving into a sunken freighter, flashlight cutting through murky water, when, bam, mannequin-like figures appear around the corner. Except they're not mannequins. They're what's left of the crew, preserved in near-perfect condition thanks to cold, oxygen-deprived waters. Their clothes still cling to them, hair still floats eerily in the current, and their faces look like they've been frozen mid-scream. Yeah, turns out water can be nature's refrigerator, if that fridge smells like rust and nightmares. This actually happens more often than you'd think. Cold, freshwater lakes especially love to keep bodies on ice for decades, sometimes centuries, like creepy collectibles no one asked for. Divers call these natural mummies. And they're not gently laid to rest. They just hang there, drifting in the dark, waiting for some poor diver to shine a light on them. It's like walking into a surprise party, except the party guests are very, very dead. Psychologically, the effect is brutal. Your brain is already on edge in deep water, claustrophobic gear, limited oxygen, the constant thought of, if I panic, I die. Now add in a jump scare from 1942. Congratulations, you've unlocked a trauma memory that will play on loop forever. Basically, divers aren't just exploring history. They're starring in an underwater horror movie that doesn't end when they swim up. Number 9. The Bone Fields. If the idea of one preserved body is bad, imagine hundreds. Divers exploring wrecks from wars, like World War II battleships, sometimes find entire stretches of seafloor littered with bones. Not neat, tidy skeletons like a museum display. Nope. Random ribs here, femurs over there, skulls grinning from the sand like some kind of deep-sea frat prank gone wrong. The science behind it is grimly simple. Shipwrecks during wartime often carried hundreds or thousands of people. When disaster struck, many went down with the vessel. Currents scatter remains across wide areas, and scavenger fish, well, they do their job. What's left decades later are fields of bones, tangled in seaweed or wedged into the ship's rusted skeleton. Now imagine finning your way through a wreck and suddenly realizing that the rocks around you have teeth. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that screams danger, doesn't care that these are just bones. It reacts like you've stumbled into a shark's den, flooding your system with panic juice. Divers often describe these moments as surreal or soul-freezing. Translation: it's the kind of sight that makes you want to surface, sell your dive gear, and never shower again without lights on. Number 8. The Black Silence. You think you know darkness like, oh, I turned off the bathroom light. Nope. Deep wrecks live in a black so absolute it makes you question whether your eyes even exist. Flashlights only cut through a few feet before the void swallows everything. And inside that silence, you start hearing things. The creak of collapsing steel, the whoosh of your own bubbles, distorted until they sound like whispers. Your brain, which hates a vacuum of sound, sometimes fills it in with phantom noises. Imagine hearing voices underwater when you know you're alone. And then there's silt. One wrong kick of your fin, and you've stirred up decades of fine sediment that coats everything like powdered sugar. Only instead of donuts, it smothers your vision completely. You go from exploring cool history to trapped in a black snow globe of doom. Divers call it the silt out, and it's one of the most terrifying experiences in wreck diving. No up, no down. Just you and the screaming realization that your oxygen tank is not infinite. Psychologically, the black silence taps into primal fears, the same ones that made cavemen huddle around fire instead of wandering off into the dark. Except down here there is no fire, just the unsettling thought that you are a tiny, fragile mammal floating inside the world's scariest basement. Number 7. The Upside Down Room. Picture this. You swim into what looks like a hallway, but the furniture is glued to the ceiling. Chairs, tables, even lamps dangling downward like they're auditioning for Stranger Things. Aquatic edition. This happens when a wreck flips as it sinks, so rooms end up inverted. Your brain, however, does not get the memo. You enter and suddenly your sense of balance does a full blue screen error. Underwater, your inner ear already struggles to tell up from down. Add an upside-down room, and your brain starts yelling, "Wait, are we floating on the ceiling or crawling on the floor?" It's basically the ocean's way of gaslighting you. Many divers report full-on vertigo, nausea, and panic when swimming into these spaces. And remember, panic plus limited oxygen equals a Darwin Award waiting to happen. The creepy kicker. Inverted rooms sometimes preserve little details. Imagine swimming into an upside-down kitchen where plates and silverware are scattered above your head, like some bizarre art installation. It's hauntingly normal, yet wrong in every possible way. Your logical brain whispers, "Oh cool, a galley." Meanwhile, your primal brain screams, "The world is broken. Get out." Number 6. The human shadows. Sometimes divers enter wrecks and see dark outlines on the walls. At first glance, you might think it's algae stains or rust patterns, but no. In many cases, these are literal shadows left behind by people killed in sudden explosions or flash fires on board. The blast incinerates bodies instantly, leaving scorch imprints of their final positions burned into steel walls, like grotesque Polaroids of their last moment. The science checks out. Intense heat, combined with chemical reactions, carbonizes organic material almost instantly. What's left is a permanent shadow, a silhouette frozen mid-action. Some look like they were running, others crouched in fear. And if you stumble on one in the middle of a dark, echoing ship, your brain doesn't just register history, it screams, "Someone died right here." From a psychology perspective, these shadows crank up what's called mortality salience. That's the fancy term for suddenly remembering you're super killable. Divers who encounter these spots often describe a heavy, oppressive feeling, like the air, or rather the water itself, is weighted with tragedy. It's not just eerie, it's a psychological gut punch that follows you long after you resurface. Basically, it's like the Titanic saying, "Yeah, welcome aboard. Try not to explode." Number 5. The tangled nets of death. Old wrecks don't just rust quietly on the seafloor. They turn into underwater junkyards. Fishing nets, ropes, and cables drape across the metal like some deranged spider web. At first, they look harmless, just floating gently in the current. But step too close, and congratulations, you're now a tuna. Divers have gotten fatally stuck in these webs, their movements making the tangle worse with every wiggle. The real nightmare comes when visibility is low. You don't even see the net until you're inside it. Then your gear catches, your fins snag, and your regulator hose feels like it's being pulled from your mouth. Cue the rising panic. Cue the skyrocketing oxygen use. Cue the realization that nobody is coming to cut you free in time. Psychologically, this mess pushes your fight or flight button into overdrive. Humans hate being restrained. It's a primal fear linked to survival. Being trapped underwater in pitch black with limited air. That's your nervous system's equivalent of a fire alarm taped to your forehead. Some divers actually carry knives or shears specifically for these moments, but even then, it's not like fumbling with scissors is easier when you're 30 meters deep in liquid darkness. Number 4. The cargo of nightmares. Okay, so imagine you're excited to check out a sunken freighter. Maybe you'll see cool crates of tea or barrels of old rum like some kind of underwater pirate Costco. Instead, you shine your flashlight into the hold and find canisters marked with ominous hazard symbols. Surprise! You've stumbled across chemical weapons, volatile explosives, or toxic cargo that's been quietly marinating underwater for decades. This isn't just a hypothetical. Wrecks from both world wars often carried bombs, shells, and gas canisters. Saltwater doesn't exactly make those safer. Some are still sealed, waiting patiently for the day they corrode enough to leak their poison into the sea or onto a very unlucky diver. And if you think bombs don't explode underwater after a century, tell that to the people who've had to clear wrecks because they were literally ticking death traps. The psychology of it is brutal. You go in expecting history and artifacts, and instead you are forced to confront the fact that this wreck is not just dangerous because of sharp metal, it's basically a submerged landmine. Your brain does a quick mental calculation. Am I exploring, or am I actively starring in a Final Destination reboot? And the answer is never comforting. Number 3. The doll room. Few things are as disturbing as the ocean's habit of turning shipwrecks into weird shrines. One infamous case. Divers entered a wreck and found a cabin filled with porcelain dolls, their faces cracked, their eyes staring blankly, their hair floating around like something out of a Victorian nightmare. And because salt water loves to corrode things unevenly, some dolls were missing jaws. Others had hollow sockets where their eyes used to be. Basically, Annabelle got a franchise expansion underwater. Why dolls? Well, many passenger ships carried toys for children, and freight ships transported all sorts of goods, including creepy porcelain faces apparently designed to haunt future divers. Psychologically, dolls already trigger what's called the uncanny valley effect, that unsettling feeling you get when something looks almost human but not quite right. Put that uncanny valley at the bottom of the ocean, where you're already primed for fear, and congratulations, you found the worst playroom in history. Divers often describe this experience as spine crawling, which is scientific shorthand for "I screamed in my regulator and nearly bolted." The surreal mix of innocence, toys, and death, Shipwreck, hits your brain like a frying pan. It's like walking into a child's birthday party hosted by ghosts who forgot how to blink. Number 2. The shallow graves. Not all shipwrecks sink neatly into the abyss. Some go down in shallow waters, close enough for bodies to get trapped inside, while oxygen-deprived divers stumble across them decades later. These aren't the freeze-dried natural mummies of cold lakes. These are bloated, waxy, and terrifyingly intact, thanks to a delightful little phenomenon called adipocere, also known as grave wax. Basically, human fat turns into soap. You didn't need to know that, but now you do. Imagine swimming through a sunken cabin, brushing aside debris, and suddenly a pale, waxy hand reaches out of the gloom. Except it's not reaching, it's just there. Frozen in time. These wax corpses don't look skeletal, they look like sleepwalking zombies. And if your flashlight hits their faces, yeah, let's just say you won't be unseeing that on land anytime soon. Psychologically, this is the full house of horror triggers. Human remains, uncanny preservation, confined spaces, and the constant awareness that you're one air gulp away from panic. Divers who've encountered these remains often resurface shaken, describing the wreck as less a ship and more a crypt. Basically, Poseidon went full horror director on this one. Number 1. The ship that breathes. If you thought rusting steel was just a boring engineering problem, oh boy, wait until you swim inside a wreck and the walls start moving. Divers have described being deep inside a ship when currents and structural shifts make the metal groan, flex, and breathe like a living creature. Imagine a giant, rusted whale inhaling around you, the bulkheads creaking like ribs expanding. Spoiler alert, ships are not supposed to feel alive. What's happening is physics at its most terrifying. Pressure changes, trapped pockets of air, and shifting currents push and pull on the decaying metal. Every movement sounds amplified in the stillness of the deep, echoing through the corridors like a death rattle. Sometimes doors slam shut behind divers. Sometimes entire walls collapse, kicking up silt and reducing visibility to absolute zero in seconds. It's the architectural equivalent of being inside a haunted house that actually wants to kill you. From a psychological perspective, this is pure claustrophobic horror. You're in a tight metal maze, your brain already chewing on the "what if I run out of air" thought, and now the maze itself starts. Breathing. Panic spikes, adrenaline surges, and rational thought tends to exit the building. Divers call it the feeling of being swallowed. Your subconscious doesn't care that it's just physics. It feels like you're inside a predator waiting for the stomach acid to kick in. In short, the wreck isn't just a relic. It's a coffin that still thinks it's alive. And if you ever needed proof that the ocean doesn't just hold history, it stage manages it into the scariest live show imaginable, this is it.
That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.
That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.